Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending upon where you are in the world, and welcome to today's webinar, Avoid Fast Trash in SAP HANA with SAP Data Services, hosted by SAP Insider and presented by Decision First Technologies. Today's event is the first in a four-part series entitled Enterprise Information Management, our summer webinar series. I'm Steve Paul, and I'm your moderator today. We have just a few announcements before we begin. This webinar is designed to be interactive between you and our presenter. There is no dial-in required, and you can listen through your computer speakers, or audio is available via call-in numbers as provided. You may participate in our Q&A session by asking questions about the information presented in this webinar at any time. Just type your question into the text box located at the bottom of our console and address to organizer. We'll answer as many questions as time permits after our presentation. Later in our program, we will also ask for your feedback. There is a survey once you exit the event. Slides will advance automatically throughout the event, and if you require a PDF copy of our slides, please complete our survey and request a copy. At this time, we recommend you disable your pop-up blockers. If you're experiencing any technical problems, please visit our webinar help guide by clicking on the help link in the upper right of your console. And now on to our presentation, Avoid Fast Trash in SAP HANA with SAP Data Services. Discussing today's topic will be Bryce Gant. Bryce is a BI professional improving business analytics with a full suite of SAP Business Objects applications. His 11 years of information technology experience and strong educational background allow him to work well across organizational boundaries, providing product implementation, project leadership, solution architecture, and technical strategies. Bryce's most recent focus has been delivering comprehensive enterprise data warehouses using SAP's Data Services application. Over to you, Bryce.
Thanks, Steve. And thanks to SAP Insider for hosting today's event. I would like to wish everyone a good afternoon. I appreciate you taking the time to attend this webinar and giving me the opportunity to speak about data quality and SAP Data Services and how it can deliver quality information to the SAP HANA platform. Again, my name is Bryce Gant, and I'm a consultant here with Decision First Technologies in Atlanta, Georgia. Just to get us started, I want to give a brief introduction of who DFT is. We're a boutique analytics consulting company specializing on the SAP Analytics suite of applications. We've been in the business for 12 years and have over 1,000 customers spanning both the SMB and enterprise markets across multiple industries. We're partnered with a number of companies to deliver our analytics. I'm sure you'll recognize some of the logos. And now on to what we'll be discussing today. First and second, I'll provide a very brief overview of the SAP HANA platform and Data Services application. Third, I'll discuss what data quality is and why you should be concerned about it. Fourth, we'll have some fun with a live demonstration of some of the capabilities available in Data Services. And finally, I'll wrap up everything with some key points, upcoming events, and sources for additional information. The fact that you're attending this webinar probably means you've already heard about HANA, thinking about it, or are currently implementing. So I won't spend too much time covering the details of the platform. So I'll just give you a very brief overview, and I'll provide some information at the end of the presentation just in case you want some more detailed information. In summary, HANA is SAP's next generation approach to data storage and access. It combines a number of different database technologies under a single platform, and where it excels and why it's really next generation is with the speed at which it's able to achieve querying large data sets. It's able to do this because it removes the disk I/O constraint that's typical in most database platforms and leverages the parallel processing available with today's multi-core, multi-processor computers. In terms of performance, I've seen queries that would typically take 15 minutes be reduced down to sub-seconds with no changes to the data or how it's structured. So where exactly does HANA fit into your enterprise landscape? It kind of fits squarely in the middle of your data sources and your query and reporting tools. I'd like to point out that HANA kind of comes in three flavors, primarily in three flavors. BW on HANA, HANA Standalone, and HANA Suite. What I'll be speaking about today and demonstrating later refers to the standalone flavor. As the previous graphic pointed out, Data Services is one of the applications capable of loading data into HANA. It's the preferred and recommended application when ETL requirements go beyond the simple string concatenation type kind of transformations, and when data quality standards need to be applied. At a high level, Data Services is SAP's enterprise class application for data integration and data quality. It can extract data from virtually any source and load it into virtually any target. It has a number of data quality transforms, some of which I'll be demonstrating later on in the presentation. One of the new features is its ability to analyze unstructured data, I think Twitter, and we have an upcoming webinar dedicated specifically to this feature. If you've worked with either Data Integrator or Data Quality in the past, Data Services is an integration of these two products. It's unique in the industry in that it provides an all-in-one solution, one GUI interface, for the capabilities I previously mentioned. You'll see in the demonstration later that there's one interface providing transforms capable of integration, quality, and text analytics. In addition, it's source and target agnostic. Sources and targets look alike, and more importantly, they're used alike in data flows. As you can see, I've got on the screen here, I've got a text target, a SQL target, and SAP HANA target. There's virtually no difference in the way that they're used in the data flows beyond the initial configuration, and I'll demonstrate that later on in the presentation. You may be sitting there thinking, hopefully at this point, that SAP HANA and Data Services sound like impressive technologies, but what value are they going to bring to my organization? And this is an important question I'd like to consider for the next few minutes. I've started with a quote from Joseph Duran, who's a pioneer in quality management. He's also the father of many quality management data principles, and that indicates, where exactly is data quality in terms of, my organization? How exactly do I determine that it's meeting my end customer's needs? And what he said is that we have to look at the data and determine whether or not it's fit for use. Does it deliver the value that the organization expects it to? But what exactly does this mean? It means that data must be accurate and that it truly reflects events that are taking place and that it's capturing, that it's complete and that it has all the context and descriptions associated with these events needed to complete my analysis. It's consistent in that it has a stable format and is in sync from a definition standpoint across the enterprise, and that it's timely and that it's available when decisions need to be made in order to drive action. These definitions are commonplace within data quality management, and I've listed some examples on the slide that are kind of impedance to data quality. Rather than go into detail, I'd like to focus a little bit on how SAP HANA shakes things up a bit. In terms of data volumes, they can become massive. Compression and performance allow the storage of a variety of different data sets. This variety often comes in different types and formats, making consistency and completeness challenging, especially if you don't have control over your source systems. For example, you may have a number of transactional systems in a distributed organization. You may be going through a merger and acquisition. You may have legacy applications or getting data sets from the government or purchasing them from third parties such as Dun & Bradstreet. These are data sources that you have no control over and have no ability to implement any type of data governance. So this variety also often leads to a multitude of different uses that you may not always know ahead of time. For example, data scientists are building predictive models using data sets from all over the organization. Therefore, it's rather difficult to determine whether data is fit for use when that use may not be known just yet, because different users have different requirements. Data scientists may be able to live with a certain degree of error, but my people out in the field from a transactional standpoint may need very, very precise information. Therefore, you're left with having to anticipate and make associations where possible. And this provides data sets that have the high potential for reuse. And all of this must be done as quickly as possible if everything I've just said isn't hard enough already, because the business has a desire and a need for current high-level analysis to drive actionable information. And HANA provides this capability without the need for numerous aggregate tables, that will increase your latency from the creation of the data to the actual analysis to the final action that takes place. But poor data quality can undermine the value of this capability. As you can see on the screen, if somebody's drilling in, has a report that they're drilling into, go into US and begin to drill down. When they get down to the locality level, which the city level, you notice I have a blank. This is one of my favorite things to encounter in reporting, in that it begins to cause questions for the business. And as soon as they begin to ask questions, they begin to distrust the data, they begin to have questions about other potential data sources, and it really undermines that BI initiative that you have going on. That's why TDWI in a recent survey said that real-time data quality is the second fastest growing data management discipline. And organizations agree that data quality should be a priority. In a poll that was published in a Deloitte paper, 47% of executives said that assuring high data quality was one of the most challenging things to their BI initiatives. And only 30% of organizations view their data as always accurate. In fact, that 30%, based on what I've seen, is probably a little high, but I'll trust IBM on that number. All of us probably know that agreeing to something should be a priority, and finding justification to finally take action can be very different things. So where can justification be found? How do we begin building that business case? If you look within your department or departments across the organization, odds are you'll find someone that has spent some time massaging data before its final use. In fact, IBM indicates that organizations spend 69% more time preparing data than analyzing it. Not only does this lead to lost productivity, but you also get these multiple shadow data sets cropping up within your organization. And having multiple sources for the same information, that's just not a very happy place to be. Best case, you've got people getting slightly different answers, but ultimately coming to the same conclusions and taking the same actions. Worst case, you've got people coming to getting different answers and reaching very different conclusions and taking very different actions. So our goal should be then to reduce data prep time and increase data analysis. And that's really where the justification comes from when you look at your data quality initiatives. And to put some hard numbers to justifying a HANA and Data Services combination, SAP just released this case study. You can see that these are fairly substantial numbers. 422% annual return, a 4-month payback, 3.5 million annual benefit. And how did they come to this conclusion? They did so by avoiding additional resources to do data prep work and increasing the productivity of the entire organization. Now, I've devoted a lot of time to talking conceptually about data quality. Now I'd like to review some of the technical implementation, after which we'll get into the demonstration. Data Services offers a number of data quality transforms to use in your data flows. Address cleansing, address verification, data cleansing, matching, geocoding. Those are just some of the most common ones. For the demonstration, we'll be focused on the data and address cleansing as well as the matching transform. So what exactly do these transforms do? Data cleansing involves parsing your data into its constituent elements. So see here I've got a multi-line input record that has what appears to be very different information on each line. And here the first step is we're going to parse it so you can see that I've got first name and last name, email address, the address, date, social security number. So I know what all those different elements are. Then we apply corrections. So see, you can the address information that we were provided wasn't quite correct according to the U.S. Post Office. The zip code wasn't correct for the location. We've taken and corrected, Manhattan, which everybody knows where it's located, but it's not really a city. It's New York from a post office standpoint. And we do some enhancements. So I get a salutation, which could go either way. I could look at the name. Data Services can determine gender based on the name and come up with Miss, or take a look at post name and recognize that she has a PhD and turn the salutation to doctor. Then finally we can apply some standardization. So we've taken future electronics, applied proper casing to it, we've formatted the Social Security number into the standard format, and we've applied a standard date format to what appears to be a higher date. Matching involves reviewing input records to identify ones that are similar enough that they probably represent the same individual, company, etc. And for purposes of aggregate reporting, should probably be grouped together. So you can see here I have three records. The names are slightly different. So I've got Margaret, Maggie, Peg, with the one record number 2. I've got Smith, record number 3, Klein. But you can see they're probably all the same individual. They're located, the addresses are very similar. And again here, this is why in terms of when you're actually implementing this, and I'll show this in the demonstration, you want to go through and standardize your information. Because when you have standard information, it's much easier to do the comparisons, and you get a much higher probability of finding matches within your data set. So in terms of trying to determine whether or not this is the same company, I can look at things like address. I can possibly look at the email domain. I want to figure out if this is the same individual. I've got the names or variants of the name. I've got email address, a full email address. I can compare Social Security numbers on a couple of the records and higher date on a couple of the other records. Now, I show this slide before we get into the demonstration just so that nobody is concerned about how daunting these transforms may appear, because they do this to allow all options to be configurable. This allows them to be customized to suit the needs of the business. For example, matching criteria could be very different for different lines of the business. Division that has mainly an online presence and does sales through a website may consider email address more heavily in the weighting in determining like records, whereas a company doing face-to-face, person-to-person type sales may consider phone number more important. The Data Services does provide in-context help menus, and there's a number of blueprints to help you get started. I highly recommend that you visit this website, download these blueprints. They're an excellent way to get started with data quality, to understand how these transforms work, and in many cases you can use them as templates to replicate as you start your data quality implementation. A couple of notes: you do have to have an SAP ID to access this website, and they are version specific, so you want to download ones that match the version that you currently have in your production environment. Okay, so now for the demo. I'm sure this is what everybody's been waiting for. I'm going to jump over to Data Services. That's running here on my local PC. Notice that Data Services has a fairly intuitive interface, and for those that have worked with it in the past or currently working with it, I've got one batch job set up that we'll be using for the demonstration. It contains one data flow. This one data flow is made up of sample information that I'm reading in. We're going to cleanse in the demonstration. I pass it through a number of cleansing operations, first through address cleansing and then through data cleansing. So we break out the address information separate from all the other information. And then I go through and we're going to do two levels of matching. So I'm going to go through and determine which firms in my data set are probably the same company, and then which individuals within those firms are probably the same individual. And finally, I'm going to load that information into SAP HANA, where then you could use it in any of their analytical reporting applications. So to start with, let's jump into the data set for just a second, give everybody some context in terms of what we're loading. So you can see here I've got a fairly common data set. This looks like it may have come from a CRM application. I've got people's names, I've got their organization, I've got some address information, I've got their state, but notice state looks like it's missing here in a few instances. I've got postal codes. Again, I've got the same problem with postal code that I have with state, in that we have some that are missing. And then I have two fields here at the end that are ones that I do typically encounter. This is kind of field overuse, so you'll see this a lot in data migrations, where a description field or some miscellaneous field gets repurposed and will contain multiple types of information. So if we look through this list here, it looks like we've got some phone numbers, email addresses. The phone numbers aren't all formatted the same way. It looks like I possibly have birthdays. And if we continue to scroll down here, I've got some title information in here somewhere. See if we can find a record very quickly. There we go. So we've got, expand this out so you can see it. So we've also got executive director, so we've got titles mixed in here. So a lot of different types of data in these two fields at the end that I'd like to parse out and actually determine what this information is and then standardize it. So let's jump back over to Data Services. What I'm going to do before I actually run this data flow is I'm going to go into my HANA console, and I'm going to truncate my target table because I don't want anybody to accuse me that I've staged this data prior to the presentation. Execute that. And let's go up here and just to show you that the target table is indeed empty. All right. I'm going to go ahead and execute this because, again, this is on my local machine, so it does take just a minute or so to run. While this is executing, let's jump back into the address cleanse transform for just a second, because I've got target tables here, template tables, that are going to a local SQL server here on my laptop. And then finally, we're delivering to the target, HANA target. Again, you can see that these particular outputs are not distinguished from one another in the data flow. The only way that you can really tell that they're different is in how the data stores are configured. So if we go into the HANA data store, we can see how it's set up in terms of what I need to do in order to connect to HANA. I just install, the HANA connectivity client, and then input my HANA server name, port number, user ID, and password. Very simple configuration, very easy to get started. And to compare that with my SQL Server, very, very similar setup. SQL Server, name, username, password, database that I'm using. Okay, let's jump into the address cleanse transform. And you'll notice here that you've got a lot of different inputs available. And again, that just so that you don't get too overwhelmed when you start, you do have in-context help to assist you. So if you want to know what a particular field is, it does become available over here and give you a little information about it. For more information, you can pull up the technical guide that installs with Data Services. They go into great detail about what each one of these lines do. So my address information, I've taken and mapped that into multi-line readers, meaning that I don't necessarily know if I'm getting PO information or physical address information mapped on those lines. So again, if you jump back to the data set, this is a mix. So sometimes I get the PO information first. Sometimes I'm getting the physical address first. Sometimes I have these combined, so I just don't know. So you map those into multi-line readers and let the transform figure it out. One other thing you can do when you go through and begin mapping your input, and I recommend that you do this to start, filter your data filter the list for best practice. And that gets you to a much smaller list to go through, and spend a few minutes just reading what each one of these input fields do. And that again gives you a good overview of what the transform is capable of. I'm mapping some additional information, so if I just want to see what I'm using. Again, this data set's a little simplistic, but it shows the power and capability of Data Services. So I'm using the firm information, city, state, zip code, and country in order to make my validation. Okay, it looks like we're done here. Now it looks like we've loaded the 338 records, and you're probably wondering, why did I load 338 records into HANA? That seems like a gross overkill. But I've got two things why I've done that. One, I'm running Data Services on a local laptop, and I'm a little constrained in terms of what I can do in terms of the presentation. And two, this is really how you want to start your data quality initiative. Take a sample set of data, something that the business can review by hand, and kind of give you some indication of where they believe the problems reside, because this is one of the most iterative things that you will do with Data Services, is walk through and actually cleanse your data. More than likely, you're going to run through multiple passes until you finally get an output that you can ultimately deliver to the business. So you just want to start with a sample data set that's representative. Okay, so now that we've got data loaded, let's jump over to, again, my target tables. Template tables were created on my local SQL server. So let's take a look at what the address cleanse transform did. So what I've done here is I've listed, so remember the address transform just cleanses address information. So name and organization are just listed here as they were from my input information, my sample data. And what I've done is I've placed the original information, the source information, right beside the cleansed version of that information. So you can see here we've gone through and standardized all of the address lines, put them into a much more readable format. I've gone through and, let's see, put in corrected abbreviations. So this really isn't an apartment, it should be suite. Put in standard abbreviations where applicable. Combined information. And if we scroll to the right and take a look at city, see here we've standardized the format. So if you have this on a report, that's much more readable than all uppercase. This kind of has the feel of something directly out of my master data in my ERP application or perhaps a legacy application. I've corrected somebody's shorthand for like Huntsville, for instance. I've corrected city where city was incorrect. So this address is really in Riverside rather than Kansas City. I've gone through, let's move over, and so I've enhanced the data too. So I've also added county information that wasn't originally present in my data set. This might be important if I'm doing sales and I've got addresses that perhaps span multiple counties, like here at DFT. We have an Atlanta address, but we actually Atlanta spans Fulton and Cobb counties. And Cobb has a lower tax rate, so we want to be sure that we're paying that lower sales tax rate. So this is just something to help you charge your customers appropriately. Again, you remember my state and my zip codes were somewhat incomplete. I've taken, and for this instance, I didn't have a state, so I've put in the proper state, a proper abbreviation. I've gone through and let's take a look at ones very quickly here. So you can see the ones that didn't have a state now do. I've taken and corrected states when they were incorrect. So Denver is in Colorado. Somebody just miskeyed that. And just to show you that we've done the same thing to zip code, run a real quick query. And I've gone through and I've filled in zip codes. Where I had an incorrect zip code, I've applied the correct one based on cleansed information from the post office. Okay, so now let's jump back to data services, and then my next step in the process was to cleanse all my other data. So this was my person and my organization. So again here, the transforms look very similar. You can filter these for best practice, for what's in use. One thing I'd like to point out here that's brand new in version 4.1 is that the cleanse package, they've all been combined, so you don't have to have multiple packages anymore for your different languages. I have the ability to come in here and actually select multiple languages. That's a brand new feature. And everything is very customizable and configurable, based on the output and my needs that the business has determined are needed in order to deliver cleansed data. Output. So again, I recommend, just start with best practice. If this is your first time taking a look at data quality, as you click on information, you can get in context help or again reference the technical guide. So here I've also outputted, and you'll see this when we run the sample data, a number of fields that I'm not particularly using in my final output. I've prefixed them with match. And I'm just using those to help me determine like individuals or like companies. So I have the ability to output more information from the cleansing process that may help a transform down the road. And also, this is where we go into, remember those fun miscellaneous fields, where I can begin to let the transform figure out what information is available in those fields. So I've mapped those into multi-line because I have no idea what that information is, and I'm going to let the transform figure it out based on the structure of the data and types and its algorithms. Prior to having tools like this, you would have to do some type of pattern matching, regular expressions, and frankly, this is much easier, and the guys that wrote these algorithms are much smarter than me. All right, let's take a look. So again, I've got a template table here, so we can take a look at the output. From the cleansing standard. Again, here we're just looking at person and firm. So you can take a look at firm and notice that one I've taken and standardized the format, so it's now in mixed case, proper case. I've standardized the abbreviation, so corporations become corp period. And if we look at person, we've done something very, very similar. So one I've taken and standardized, kind of the mixed case. I've put in periods where the transform believes that I have initials rather than names. And then I have some output at the end that's going to help me do matching. So I get things like, so this is kind of interesting here. So Sherry may be short for Cheryl, or it may be a different spelling. And I've got the different constituent elements of the name itself. So I have last names, I've got junior, senior, all broken out into the different elements. And that's just to aid the matching process. And let's come to my favorite fields here at the end. So you can see here that it's correctly determined that the date, that I have a birthday, parse that and put that into the correct field. I have a phone number, I've standardized the phone number. I've got email, it correctly determined that it was an email. And if I scroll down here a bit, if you see, I've got my sales manager that's correctly determining title information where I have it. Again, that was just all mixed in these columns, all this information jumbled together, and Data Services is able to take that and parse it into and make it meaningful information. One of the other, let's point this one out. This was an interesting one. So here somebody inputted the phone number in a very different format, not dashes, they use slashes and a pound. And I've got phone numbers that came in with extensions, and Data Services is able to take that information and parse it out into and standardize it. Okay, next step. So my query here is not doing a whole lot. I'm going to jump in here real quickly just to point out one more advantage of the blueprints. You get a number of nifty functions when you download the blueprints. Again, it's worth the download just to get these functions because they can do interesting things, like I can remove some Unicode characters. And again, that's just to help improve the matching process. Let's jump into match. So again, here, remember I was taking this data and I'm doing a two-type association. I want to determine what firms are the same within my data set, and then once I've determined that, I want to determine what individuals in that data set are most likely the same person. Again, I've got my outputs very, very similar, and options. So here you notice that you don't change your options directly. You have to hit Edit Options. And I'm matching my firm information, and I'm using a weighted score. That's 85. And I'm saying essentially that the firm name and the different addressed parts together, that needs to constitute an 85% confidence in order for Data Services to automatically make that association. Again, these are all configurable, so if I wanted to bring in perhaps some of that miscellaneous information and use it, I have the capability of doing it. I can come in here and say if I have that miscellaneous information, I can include them and then change a few options so that they are used in the evaluation or not. So if I were to change these two to ignore, what would happen is that whatever weight I assigned, say email address, for instance, would get automatically redistributed equally among the other fields. For an individual, again, I'm doing an 85% confidence, and I'm mainly using different parts of the name in order to determine that. Output, again, you can filter this list for just the information that I'm using in the output. And let's jump over real quick to SQL and look at my output. So now here you'll notice in my query that I'm filtering out the nulls. So essentially, if I didn't get a match on firm, then the field has a null. And we definitely do have those in our data set, but you'll notice that we've made 88 associations in a data set that had none. So let's take a look at this real quick. So we've correctly determined that Trilogy is the same. And this one's a little more interesting. So here I've got HSBC Bank, Bank 1, and just SHBC. You'll notice that they're all in the same grouping from a firm perspective, and they're all likely candidates in that, the 99%, 96 was the lowest confidence I have in that group. And what makes this, the reason I chose this one, is I've got individuals here, Chuck Henderson, C. Henderson, Charles Henderson, C. Henderson, CPA, that, somebody taking and looking at this data set goes, oh, well, that's probably the same person. And you'll notice that, indeed, Data Services was able to make that association. So here I've got, and I've assigned them a group number. So every single individual that has the same group number is Data Services provided a confidence that these are the same person. And then finally, I'm outputting that information into SAP HANA, my final cleansed information. So let's jump over to, again, I'm running the same SQL I ran earlier to show you that it was empty. And this is my final data set that I deliver to the business. I've got my data cleansed and standardized. It's grouped, so I'm grouping. I've got matched companies and I've got matched individuals. Jump back into the presentation because we're running a little short on time here. I've covered quite a bit of information at this point, but here are really the key takeaways that I'd like you to have for today. SAP HANA is fast, and it achieves this through in-memory and parallel processing. SAP Data Services provides powerful data quality transforms and integrates seamlessly with SAP HANA. And together they deliver trustworthy, high-quality information to the organization so they can achieve value and productivity gains. Apart, what do you get? You're getting really fast but potentially inaccurate data. If I had to summarize up this entire presentation, marketing folks like to get down to key phrases, 5 words or less. I don't think I could have done any better job than, Wyatt Earp when he said, fast matters, but accuracy is final. So, if you're, if it's about to strike high noon and you're a little concerned about your BI initiative, DFT's here to help. We offer both strategic and technical services provided by expert consultants. In fact, 4 of my colleagues have a book out in October on implementing SAP HANA that includes data services. Details are on this slide. We do have a coupon code available for $20 off if you pre-order it by July 15th. And speaking of July, you want to mark your calendar for the following dates. My colleague Rich will be discussing Information Steward and how it can help you assess your data quality and keep it clean on July 9th. On July 16th, Jennifer will be discussing data migration with some best practices and lessons learned that we've gathered over the years. And on July 23rd, Nick will be discussing text analytics. That was one transform that I kind of glossed over in the presentation, but he will be covering that in detail and showing you how you can provide structure and meaning to unstructured data. For more information, please take a look at these web links. They're invaluable sources that I used in putting this presentation together. If you want some more technical detail on a lot of the data quality transforms, Bruce has a multi-part blog series going on currently with the first 2 parts available now, and they go into great detail in terms of the different quality transforms. Some additional resources, general resources, SAP Experts, Data Services, SAP HANA Welcome, Community Network. These are sources I visit almost daily. And at this point, I'd like to turn it back over to Steve for any questions.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Excellent presentation, Bryce, and demo. And we're going to segue into our audience Q&A in a moment. Just want to alert our audience to a few things. First of all, there will be a feedback form survey that will appear on your desktop after this event, and we greatly appreciate it if you could complete that. Thank you very much. Also, some people asking if the recording will be available for this session, and it will be, and we'll send in an email to you and with a link so when it is ready. And just a reminder to participate in our Q&A session, just type your question into the text box located at the bottom right of your console, and we're going to answer as many questions as time permits. If we don't get to your question during the live session, someone will follow up with you in the next few business days. So, Bryce, I just wanted to make sure that you can see the questions that have been submitted already. I do have one quick one here from William. Can I source from Oracle or DB2 to perform any of these data quality operations?
Yes, you can. So again, Data Services is somewhat, data source agnostic. So we can definitely pull from Oracle and DB2 and perform these data quality transformations that I've demonstrated today. Okay, give me just a second to scan through.
Sure.
Let's see. So it looks like a lot of the questions are around some more technical detail in terms of the different transformations. Again, I point everybody to Bruce's blog series. He goes into great detail in terms of what the different transforms do and the different options. Let's see. We've got one question here on address cleansing internationally. Yes, Data Services can cleanse international addressing. So let me bounce into Data Services real quick just for 1 second and show you that we do have transforms for global address cleansing. So I didn't point that out in the demonstration, but it definitely does have it. Let's see, we've got another question around does data services work directly with the ECC data, or do we need to pull it from ECC to BW? So with Data Services 4.1, you can access some of the standard extractors that BW provides in order to pull information into a different source into HANA. But if you've got BW, that's going to kind of be your standard extraction process. That's the recommended extraction process. But take a look at some of the new features in 4.1, and that will give you a little more detail. Let's see. So a lot of people are wanting that coupon code for the book. I'll have to ask Jonathan for a cut of the proceeds. That will be available in the recording. So if you fill out the survey at the end, you'll get the PDF, and that will have the coupon code for you. Let's see, another question asking whether or not data services is the only way to get data into HANA. It's definitely the recommended approach in terms of, when you're going to go beyond the simple. There are other ways to load data into HANA and other tools, but again, it's, that's going to be somewhat of a different answer based on what you're trying to achieve. But data services, to answer the question, it isn't the only way, but it's probably going to be the preferred way if you're doing any type of data quality initiative. Let's see, I've got another question talking about cleansing language information. So if I've got different languages, so what that's going to do is, say like Sanchez would have, if you're doing Spanish cleansing, it's going to get the little tilde over the A. If I go through and convert that, say, and output it into English, you lose a lot of those different type kind of characters. So it is possible. Again, I don't have enough detail to answer the specific question. I would just encourage you to try it. You can download those and try it, run it through, and see if it performs the function that you want to perform. Let's see, a couple of questions on the presentation. That will be available if you fill out the survey at the end. Let's see, so here's a good question. So is the address cleansing functionality shown in the demo a data services standard offering, or do we have to have a separate license? So data services is a combination of both data integrator, which is more the traditional ETL functionality, and the data quality initiatives. They can be licensed separate, or you can purchase a license that gives you access to both functionalities, and then the different directories that you want to use in your address cleansing have to be licensed. So again, I just encourage you to talk to your SAP rep if you're interested. I'm sure they'll provide a trial key and let you play with it and see if you can get through and do the cost justification to get it in your organization. Let's see. I've got some questions on roadmap. And BW being replaced in the future. I'm not up on the specifics of that. I'd be surprised if they're going to replace BW. But again, that's something I would talk to your SAP sales rep.
And Bryce, we've had a number of requests for the link to register for the other events in our series. So I'm going to just push that out as a chat to our audience so that you can register for the other events. And I think we have a few more moments. If you see anything else, otherwise we'll wrap it up.
Okay, one last question popped in here on whether or not they need licensing to do USPS address cleansing. So the different directories are licensed separately, that they are a different purchase from the SAP Data Services offering. Now there may be some bundled packages that you can get. So again, I just encourage you to talk with your SAP sales rep.
Okay, well, I think unless you can squeeze one more quick one, I think that's probably all the time we have.
I'm not seeing any more quick ones, Steve.
Okay, great. Well, you can follow up with people at a later date if we didn't get to your question, and we want to just again thank you all. Remind you to please complete the feedback form that will open up at the end of our webinar. And for more information, do you want to open up that PowerPoint slide to some other resources and for more information? As we thank you all for attending today's webinar, Avoid Fast Trash in SAP HANA with SAP Data Services, hosted by SAP Insider, presented by Decision First Technologies. Shortly after this live event, we'll send you an email reminder so you can access this presentation on demand. And on behalf of our guest, Bryce Gant of Decision First Technologies, we want to thank you for your time and have a great day.